Hello, students. Today, we are going to talk about a very important idea. It's a word you hear all the time, development. But have you ever stopped to think about what it really means? Let's find out together.
To begin, let's start with a question for you. I want you to really think about your own life, your future. What would make it better? Maybe it's getting a really good education. Or perhaps finding a good, secure job when you grow up. You would want your family to be healthy and safe, wouldn't you? And of course, you'd want to be treated with respect by everyone.
Well, believe it or not, these hopes that you have, they are the real meaning of development. You see, development is not just about money. It is the process of improving the quality of life for everyone. It's about how people live, what they're able to achieve, and how they feel in their society.
All right, so to really understand what development means for a country or for the world, we first have to start with ourselves. We have to look at our own personal hopes and our dreams.
Just look at this picture. We see so many different people living their lives. Now, every single person here, just like you and just like me, has hopes for the future. They have dreams. We call these aspirations. We all have an idea of what a better life would look like for us.
And that's really the key, you see. These personal hopes, these desires that we all have for a better life, they are the very foundation, the starting point for understanding the big idea of development. It all begins with what is important to us as individuals.
But here is where it gets interesting. Do you think everyone has the same idea of a better life? Well, because people live in very different situations, their goals and their aspirations can be very different.
Let's look at some examples. For a landless laborer in a village, development might just mean getting more days of work and better wages so he can send his children to a good school. But for a prosperous farmer, development could mean getting a higher price for his crops and maybe even finding cheaper labor. Now think about a young person in a city without a job. For them, development is finding a secure job. And what about a girl from a rich urban family? Her goal might be to have as much freedom as her brother or to study in another country. You see, everyone's idea of development is shaped by their life.
So, this brings us to a really tricky question. What happens when one person's idea of development actually harms another person? What if their goals clash?
Let's take a clear example. Industrialists might want to build a huge dam to get more electricity for their factories. For them, this is development. This is progress. But to build that dam, the homes and lands of many tribal people might be flooded. For these people who lose everything, this is not development at all. For them, it is destruction.
So from this, we learn two very important things. The first thing is, different people have different developmental goals. And the second thing, which is just as important, is that what is development for one person may not be development for another. In fact, it could even be harmful. Okay, so if development means different things to different people, it must be about more than just one thing, right? This brings us to a very important idea. The development is about more than just money. We can think about our goals in two different categories. On one side, we have material goals, things that money can buy, like a good income, a nice house, or a car. But on the other side, we have non-material goals, things like being treated equally, having freedom, feeling secure, and getting respect from others, and of course, friendship. Now, you cannot buy these things with money, but aren't they just as important for a happy life?
This quote explains it perfectly. Of course, money and the things we can buy with it are important. Our life does depend on them. But the quality of our life, how happy and satisfied we feel, also depends a lot on these non-material things. So, let's test a very common belief. Many people think that if a place has a higher average income, it must be more developed. But is that always true? Let's investigate.
Okay, have a look at this table. It shows something called per capita income. That's just the average income of one person in that state for 1 year. Now, if you look at the numbers, you can see that Haryana has a higher per capita income than Kerala.
So if we were only looking at money, we would say that Haryana is more developed than Kerala, right? But is that the full story? Let's look a little closer. Now, look at this. These are other very important things. In Haryana, for every 1,000 babies born, 28 died before their first birthday. But look at Kerala. That number is only 6. That's a huge difference. Also, the literacy rate in Kerala is 94%, much higher than Haryana's 82%. So even though Kerala has a lower average income, it is doing much better in health and education.
So why is that? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. The money in your own pocket cannot buy everything you need for a good life. It cannot buy a clean, pollution-free environment for you to breathe in. It cannot guarantee that you will be protected from infectious diseases. For these things, the entire community needs to have good public facilities, like schools and hospitals and sanitation systems. So, all of this leads us to our final point. We need to understand that development is not a final destination. It's not like a prize you win and then the game is over. No, it's a continuous journey, an ongoing conversation we must have as a society.
All right, let's quickly summarize what we have learned today. First, development is all about improving the quality of our lives. Second, different people can have different and even conflicting development goals. Third, development is about much more than just income. Fourth, those non-material things like health, education, and respect are extremely important. And finally, development is a continuous process of deciding what we want to achieve together as a society.
And as we think about development, I want to share this beautiful quote with you. It says, "We have not inherited the world from our forefathers, we have borrowed it from our children." This reminds us that whatever choices we make about development today, they will deeply affect the world that we leave behind for future generations. So, I will leave you with a final question to think about. Now that you understand these basic ideas, what does development mean to you? What kind of progress would make your own community, your village, or your city a better place for everyone to live? The answer to that question, that is where true development really begins.